Uh, Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another chapter of DigiHearts Hazard's Fate, written by yours truly. Alright, so here we are, the first official chapter of my story. And quite frankly, I kind of wish I broke it up into more chapters and have the entire thing be one single chapter, but oh well. I wrote this back in 2017, so what am I going to do now? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this chapter. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and share to your friends, loved ones, or random strangers. Please don't do the last one. But seriously, like, comment, subscribe, and share to others so that we can spread the word of chaos. uh, I need to come up with a better way of introducing myself. Anyway, remember, disclaimer, I do not claim to own, or will ever own Kingdom Hearts or Digimon. They belong to their respected companies, and without further ado, let's get right on into it. Chapter 1, Destiny Islands. Takato slowly started to open his eyes and saw that he was on a beach and was holding his sketch pad with a drawing of the ace of the setting sun in the waves when he noticed that a brown-haired girl was walking up to a brown-haired boy, who woke with a start. Takato couldn't help but laugh too. He looked around his location. It was a big tropical island that was called Destiny Islands. It was fairly large and had a huge tree that was big as the island itself. Takato ended up here less than a month ago, but for some reason he couldn't remember how he got there. The last thing he remembers was that he was hanging out with his friends in Shinjuku, Japan. Then, the next, he wakes up here and made three new friends. The girl who moved to the island a few years prior to himself was named Kairi. She seemed to be the nicest girl that he had met, besides Selfie, another girl on the island, that is. The silver-haired boy, Riku, who seemed to be like the unannounced leader of the group. He also seemed to be more mature. He also seemed to be the more mature one as well. He helped keep the gang together. And finally, the spiky-haired boy, whose name is Sora. He was a bit of an airhead, and was always competing with either him or Riku. He seemed nice, but he acted so lazy at times. Takato couldn't help but feel a bit overprotective of Kairi. Why, he really couldn't explain it, but for some reason he just felt like he should protect her. As Takato was thinking about all of this, he failed to notice that his three new friends, Sora, Riku, and Kairi, were walking up to him. Then Sora said with a laugh, "Alright, Gogglehead, what's your excuse this time?" Takato jumped out of his spot and glared at his new friends, who were all laughing. Then he said, I should never have told you guys. I should never have told you guys about that nickname. I'm sorry. I must have fallen asleep while I was drunk." Riku shook his head and said, "For honestly, between Sora being a lazy bones, Sora, honestly, between Sora being a lazy bonehead, you and your drunks, and Kairi goofing around, it's gonna take us another month before we finish the raft." Takato rolled his eyes and said, "Well, excuse me, but I did only show up here about a month ago with no memory of what happened or how I got here. Just like Kairi." Sora then smirked and said, "Well, aren't you worried about your friends, Takato? What about your friend Rika?" Takato noticed a smirk on Sora's face when he said that, but replied with, "Sora, I told you before. I don't have to worry about Rika. In fact, she could probably beat up all four of us, as well as Titus, Waka, and Selfie without even breaking a sweat." Sora just smiled and said, "Yeah, you told us all this before. But I want to know what I think? I think you're just scared that your girlfriend could kick your butt." Takato glared at Sora for the girlfriend remark and said, "I told you, Rika is a scary person when she's mad, Sora." Sora then rolled his eyes and said, "Sure, I'll believe that. just as soon as you admit that you've been cheating in all our spars. Takato laughed and said, I told you before, I don't cheat. Sora then said, you've just been lucky so far. But this time it will end with me as the winner. Takato then smirked, then asked, Oh, is that so? Perhaps we need a reminder about who is stronger out of the two of us. Sora then asked, Is that a challenge I hear? Takato smirked, then went into his pocket and pulled out a pair of red and black fingerless gloves with plastic brass knuckles and put some on. He then smirked and said, You know it. Kairi then placed her hands on her sides and frowned and she asked, Are you two always going to do this when one of you get into an argument with each other? Riku laughed and shook his head. He said, Aren't we supposed to be working on the raft together? Takato smirked and simply said, To answer your question, Kairi, Sora started this when I got here 1 month ago, just to see who's stronger. Then after my first defeat using swords, I found these in my back pockets. I don't even remember why I have them. Just that I feel like I promised someone I would wear them one day. And we fought again, this time we fighting hand-to-hand combat, and I won. Then he decided to challenge me every chance he gets. It only wins about half of them. He says he's not good enough and won't be enough until he beats me all the time. Besides, everyone looks at him as he says, fighting him is easy compared to what I had to fight at home. Riku nodded, then smirked and said, Yeah, those data monsters of yours. Takato shook his head and said, They're called digital monsters, or Digimon for short. And yes, they are stronger than you guys. So, Sora, are you ready to lose again? Sora just smiled and said, I was about to ask you the same thing. Riku laughed and said, Alright, you two, 1 round, then we will work on the raft. Got it? Both Sora and Takato nodded, then said, Got it. Takato and Sora both went to different sides of the same area. Sora holding a wooden sword that he had hidden away in one of the bushes nearby, while Takato was making sure his gloves were on tight. And then they stared at each other, both taking a battle stance. At first, neither Sora nor Takato moved. They just stood there, watching each other. There was no sound except the sounds of the waves crashing against the beach. Then, as if an unspoken message was announced, the two ran off at each other. Sora slammed down his sword onto Takato, who ducked and rolled out of the way just in time to avoid getting hit in the head. Then he went some fast jabs to Sora, who tried to dodge the assault as best as he could, but he couldn't dodge all the punches and got him hit in the stomach a few times. Then Sora backed off Takato to catch his breath, but the young tamer wasn't about to let the beach boy catch his breath, and ran after him, launched another punch. But just before Takato's fist landed, Sora once again dodged the punch and retaliated with his wooden sword by swinging at Takato's gut, sending him backwards a few feet. But before Sora could proceed to attack Takato, the tamer charged at Sora and proceeded to punch the young boy in the gut, knocking him backwards and onto his butt. Then Riku said, Match! Winner, Takato! Takato smiled and walked over to Sora and held out his hand. Sora looked at him with disappointment. Then he smiled and accepted it. Takato pulled the kid up. Sora rubbed his arm and said, Man, Takato, me and Riku used to be the strongest ones on the island. Then you come along, and soon enough it's like we're trying to keep up with you. Takato lightly chuckled and said, Well, I still have trouble fighting Riku at times, you know. Sora looked at him in disbelief and said, You have trouble? Come on, Takato. Right now, you're the only person on the beach that can be at a standstill with Riku. Not only that, but you were able to beat Waka on your first try. And that guy's like the best when it comes to soccer. And you know that guy wasn't going easy on you, you know? Kairi laughed a little and said, He's right, Takato. Waka isn't easy to beat. Excuse me. Waka isn't an easy guy to beat. Heck, he's even the best soccer player we got on the islands. How were you able to beat him? Takato sheepishly smiled while rubbing the back of his head and said, Well, I've told you guys, back home, I was a soccer player. I was even pretty good at it. Hey, I became the captain of the soccer team. Now then, shall we get on the raft? Sora, Riku, and Kairi nodded, and Kairi said, Alright then, how about we race? The three boys looked at each other and cussed. Do we have to? Sora laughed and said, What, tired already? Riku then said proudly, I could ask you the same thing, Sora. I mean, after all, Takata did just beat me once again. So you gonna quit? Sora and Takata looked at one another, smiled, then nodded. Then the two of them dashed off towards the group's hangar. All the way, everyone was laughing. Then Takata stopped and looked towards the horizon. Then he thought, how did I end up here, on this island, on this world? And what happened to my world, to my friends? Rika, Henry, Gilmon. Heck, I'm even beginning to miss Kazu and Termon's annoying jokes right now. I just hope they're all okay. The three islanders noticed that Takata had stopped, went to check up on him. Rika then approached him and asked, Still thinking about them, Takata? Takata nodded. Then Sora said, I'm sure you will see them again, Takata. Takata nodded again and said, I hope so, guys. I hope so. Takata slowly started to space out, remembering all the times he had with his friends, both the good and the bad, in the most recent dream he's had. Kairi smiled, then asked, The sunrise is amazing, right, Takata? Takata? Takata snapped back to reality and said, Oh, sorry, guys. I must have spaced out again. Riku said, You've been doing that a lot recently, Takata. Got something on your mind? Takata sighed and said, It's just, I had this weird dream. Kairi groaned and said, Ugh, not you too. Lazy Bones here said he had a weird dream as well. Takata looked at Sora and asked, You have a dream where you're falling through darkness, then take a single step and suddenly you're surrounded by doves? Notice that you're standing on a glass platform with 4 weapons, then have to do a whole lot of crazy things, find these strange shadows, only having to fight your own shadow? Sora nodded his head and said, Yeah, except I didn't have 4 weapons to choose from. Only 3. A sword, a shield, and a wand. What was the 4th weapon you had to choose, Takata? Takata said, A pair of gauntlets that seemed like a pair of dragon claws. Takata then said, Wow, makes the sword I chose seem less important. Riku then said, Alright, you two, enough discussing these. Let's get back to building the raft. Everyone nodded and said, Right. They reached their workplace and Kairi took out 2 sets of paper to Sora and Takata. They had a list of things that they needed for the raft. And she said, Alright then, today both Sora and Takata will need to collect different items that we will need for the raft. Sora, you'll need to collect items that will help with the raft. Riku, you'll help me tie the pieces of the wood we have to collect so far. And Takata, your job is to collect items we will need once we set sail, such as canteens for water, a couple of fruit from the trees, maybe even a few coconuts for emergency drinks. After that, we will finish up tomorrow, and then, the day after that, we will set sail. The boys nodded and went to work. Takata collected the 4 empty canteens in his backpack, which was red and black with the digital hazard symbol on the front, to store the rest of his stuff he collects. His first stop was the waterfall near the secret place, which was the gang's little hiding spot. On his way to the waterfall, Takata bumps into a boy that was about as tall as he was, with tall orange hair with a blue bandana tied around it. A yellow open vest, blue wristbands, and orange sweatpants that stopped past his knees with 2 big X's at the ends, and light green sandals. And then Takata said, Hey, Waka, what's up? The boy, known as Waka, said in a Jamaican accent, Oh, Takata, what's up, man? You and your little group still gonna try to sail it to another world, man? Takata smiled and said, You know it. So what you been up to? Waka smiled and said, Oh, nothing much, man. Just hanging out with Sophie and Titus. We've been trying to think of a way to beat you, man. Think that together we can beat you, man. Takato laughed and asked, "So I'm guessing I want one last chance to beat before you guys try to fight me all at once then?" The Jamaican soccer player nodded and said, "You betcha, man. So, you up for it?" Takato frowned as he thought, "The only reason why I'm able to beat these guys is because I have more experience than them. But even if I fight with all I've got, 3 against 1 will be in my favors. So we'll have to even the odds." Then Takato had a devilish grin sneak its way to his face. Then he had another thought. "But if we do that, then it wouldn't feel dishonorable. It won't feel right to me at all. Curse me and my knight's honor. I guess I'll have to tell him that," Takato thought. He then turned to Waka and said, "Waka, if we do that, then would it be fair for everyone else?" Waka then asked, "Oh, what are you talking about, my goggle-headed friend?" Takato ignored the gogglehead joke and said, "I mean that we have fought each other one-on-one and only one-on-one. Besides, I'll go against my honor." Walker then said, "Man, you really are a knight, living by a code of honor. That is respectable. So we will just do the usual and fight you one-on-one before you leave. Kind of like a special goodbye for you guys." Takato smiled and said, "Thanks, Waka." Waka smiled and said, "Don't mention it, pal. Now then, you want to see who's stronger, man?" Takato smiled and nodded. Then he pulled out his combat gloves and said, "First hit the ground loses. Fair enough for you, Waka." Waka nodded and held out his soccer and said, "You know it, man." Takato and Waka got into their forms, into their fighting positions. Takato said, "Let's go." Waka nodded, then kicked the soccer ball at Takato. He returned it with a kick, then charged at him. Walker caught his ball just in time for Takato to appear in front of his face and punched him in the gut. Walker was hurt, but he wasn't beaten. He regained his foot and charged behind Takato and launched his soccer ball at his back. It hit him, but before he could land on his face, he extended his arms out and used his momentum to launch himself back onto his feet. Then he turned towards Walker and cracked his knuckles. Then he charged forward again and gave Walker a double-layer knuckle sandwich to the gut. It pushed him back and made him feel dizzy, but it didn't defeat him. Walker then launched a high-speed soccer ball at Takato, who used his feet to catch it and returned it to center his gut, stopped him in his tracks. Then Takato finished him with a final blow to his stomach. Walker fell onto his butt and said, "Aye, man, that hurt." Walker rubbed his stomach, then looked up to Takato, who was headed in his direction, and said, "Aye, man, still can't believe that you're able to beat me, man. I used to be the best when it came to soccer, and then you come around here when I started learning a few tricks." Takato lightly chuckled and held out his hand. Walker looked at him, and then he grabbed it. Takato said, "I told you, Walker, back home I was pretty into soccer. And to tell you the truth, you're like the best person here that could give me a run for my money when it comes to soccer. Maybe if we ever come back here, we could put together a soccer team and travel with different best soccer team of them all. Wouldn't that be awesome?" Walker smiled and said, "Yeah, man, they were good. Now then, why did you come here, Gugglehead?" Takato smiled and laughed and asked, "Why does everyone call me that now?" Walker just laughed and said, "Well, I call you Gogglehead because you wear the goggles. I think everyone else calls you that because of the stories of Rika and everyone else." Whew. Takato sighed then he remembered the first question and said, "Shoot! I almost fill up our canteens." Takato then took out the 4 canteens and went to fill into the waterfall and started filling them up. While he was doing that, he said, "I must say, Waka, this island, it's so peaceful and quiet. It's what one could call paradise. All right, Waka?" Dakota looked behind him and saw that Walker had left, and he sighed, and then said, Man, just when I start talking about this place, Walker leaves. Oh well, now then, let's see here. Fill up canteens, check. The next thing on the list is some fruit and some coconuts. Alright then. Huh? Dakota turns and notices a girl with light brown hair that goes out almost like a wave on both sides, and two small pieces of hair in the back, green eyes, and wearing a small yellow outfit, a blue bead bracelet on her left arm, and brown sandals sitting on one of the docks. Woo! Not used to talking so much like this. Alright. Then. Ugh. Oops, that's wrong. The girl, now known as Sophie, looked behind her and said, Shit. Oh, crud. The girl walks up to the girl and says, Hey, Sophie, how have you been doing lately? The girl, now known as Sophie, looked behind her and said, in a sweet and gentle voice, Oh, oh, Takato, how have you been doing? Takato smiled and said, Oh, not much, Walko. Got beaten again. Sophie then asked, So, I guess he told you his plan then? Takato nodded and said, As much as I would like to be able to fight you all at once, I can't. It would just go against my honor. Sophie nodded and said with a smile, I know. Takato asked, Wait, you know? Wait, you know? Sophie nodded and said, me and Titus both know that you're the only person on this island that actually has anything close to honor. And when Walker suggested that we team up to defeat you, both me and Titus tried to explain that doing such a thing dishonorable and wouldn't sit well with you. Takato felt touched at this and said, Thanks, Sophie. Sophie nodded, then asked, So, I guess this is it, huh? Takato looked at her while she continued, You guys will be leaving soon, and then I'm gonna miss you guys. Gary's like a sister to me. So, well, he's kind of like the annoying little brother that I can't get rid of. Riku's like the mature older brother that keeps everyone together. Takato then asks, And what am I? Sophie smiled and said, You are the kid that everyone tries to defeat but never succeeds. You're the kid that brings us together as a team. Takato smiles at this, then said, Don't worry, Sophie. Sorry. Oh, it's like 8 p.m. for me right now. Sophie looks up at the goggle-wearing teen who says, No matter how far apart we may be, even if it is worlds apart, we will never forget each other. No matter how hard I try to forget about Sora. Sophie starts laughing at the remark, then asks, That's a nice saying you got there, Takato. Was that something your friends used to say back home? Takato nodded, then said, Yeah, something like that. Sophie then got on her feet and asked, So, you want to have another go? Takato then says, I don't like hurting girls, right, Sophie? Sophie chuckled and said, Is that mostly because of Rika, Takato? The goggle-headed tamer then sighed and said, All right, fine. After you, I might as well challenge Titus as well. Sophie nodded. Then both she and Takato took their places, and Sophie took out a jump rope and got into a fighting position. Fighting stance, I mean. Same thing. Who cares? Takato, seeing Sophie was ready, took out and put on his battle gloves and said, Well then, Sophie. Well then, be ready, Sophie. I'm coming. Sophie nodded and said, Same rule as always, Takato? Takato said, First to hit the ground loses? Yes. Sophie nodded, then both she and Takato took a fighting stance and waited. Then, as the wind changed direction, and Takato charged at Sophie with a fist ready to be delivered. But Sophie used her jump rope and tied Takato's fists up and then launched him away. Takata recovered just before he hit the ground, and then he waited and watched as Selfie stop to catch her breath. That is when Takata charged the young girl. Before Selfie could react, Takata charged at her and delivered a punch to her stomach. But before she hit the ground, she used her jump rope as a lasso and threw it at a nearby tree and pulled herself up. Then she threw her jump rope like a lasso again, this time at Takata. Then she pulled him towards her and kicked him into the gut, sending him backwards. Takata was dizzy for a moment, but then he recovered his bearings. Then he dashed at Selfie and caught the jump rope lasso that was heading his way, and reversed it onto her, tying her up, and then punched her in the gut, knocking her backwards and onto the ground, thus making this fight go to Takata. Then Takata went up to her and held out his hand and said, "Sorry about that, Selfie." Selfie took his hand and got back on her feet, then said, "It's all right. You show me I need to improve my skills a bit more. Until then, don't go losing anyone but us. Got that?" Takata nodded and said, "Can do. Just don't count on me winning against all of you guys just to lose to Sora. If I did that, I would never hear the end of it." Selfie and Takata shared a laugh together. Then Selfie frowned and asked, "So, you're really sure about leaving us, huh?" Takata frowned and said, "I'm sorry, Sophie, but it's just something that we need to do. I need to know if there are other worlds out there and try to find my friends. It's something I need to do." Sophie nodded and said, "Well, once you do find them, do find new worlds, promise me that you will return here after a while, all right?" Takata nodded and said, "I give you my word, Sophie. You guys have become like family to me, and I won't forget about you guys, so don't worry. We will return one day, I promise." Sophie nodded, then she smiled and said, "Well then, you better get on it. You know how Riku is. And I can only imagine what Sora would say if he was the first one done with his tasks." Takata nodded and said, "Yeah, he's gonna say that's another win for him or something like that. And I'll never hear the end of it." Both Sophie and Takata laughed at this, and Takata said, "Well, thanks, Sophie. See ya." Takata then headed out to take care of one final thing before he grabbed the last items on his list. Takata then approached the top of the treehouse where a young boy who could possibly be a clone of Sora, wearing an open blue, white, and yellow vest and blue shorts, with one leg longer than the other, light green sandals, and holding a long pole, standing there practicing his form. Then Takata said, "Hey, Titus." Is it Titus or Titus? I can never get that right. The boy, now known as Titus, turned around and said with a smile, "Well, if it isn't the night of just..." Why the hell did I go with the Jamaican accent? "Well, if it isn't the night of Destiny Islands. Have you already beaten the others, Staccato?" Staccato couldn't help but to chuckle and say, "I told you to stop calling me that, Titus." Titus just laughed and said, "Well, what else am I supposed to call the night that beat everyone on the island?" Staccato smirked and said, what if I start to call... Well, what if I were to start calling you the clone of Sora then? You wouldn't like it very much now, would you?" Titus just laughed and said, "Go ahead. Practically everyone here thinks we're brothers already. See, you know what I say is true, Sir Gallant Man of Shinjuku." Titus said the last part with a bow. Takata laughed and said, all right, Titus. I didn't come here to start our usual challenge of insults. I came here to let you know that we'll be leaving the island soon. And, well, I've already beaten Sora, Waka, and Selfie. Collect names on the list that Kyrie made. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure that you know what is happening now, right? Give me a minute to catch my breath. Ooh, excuse me. Takano nodded his head and said, Titus smiled and asked, You want to have a fight against me now, don't you? Takano nodded his head and said, Yeah, I do. Sora almost gave me a hard time. Walker gave me a decent challenge with his soccer skills. And Selfie almost had me with her jump rope lasso. And if you give me a good challenge, I might have to test Riku out then. See if I can finally be able to beat him without having to be almost beaten myself. Titus laughed and said, Alright then, but don't forget to collect the last of the items you need, or Kari's gonna have your head. Takano laughed and said, Oh yeah, then I'll have to tell her it was your fault. Titus laughed and said, So, shall we get started? Takano nodded and got his gloves on, took a ready stand and said, Let's do this. Then Takano charged forward and swung his sword in a spiral. Takano. Slow down, Chaos. Slow down, man. Then Titus charged forward and swung his sword in a spiral motion, trying to hit Takano on the side. But he dodged at the last moment and delivered a punch to Titus's face, who retaliated by swinging his sword in upward motion and hit Takano in the stomach. Takano gripped his stomach and glanced at Titus, who had a smirk on his face. Then Takano ran past Titus, scaring him, and then used the trick Rika taught him, started running up the treehouse wall, and then jumped in front of Titus and punched him in the gut. Titus quickly regained his bearings and swung his sword in a spiral motion, trying to hit Takano on his sides again. The sword connected and Takano flinched, but he jumped backwards and punched Titus in the gut once again. And this time he fell on the floor. Takano was the victor. Titus then said, Man, Walker was right. Seems like the only way we could beat you was if we were to team up against you. Takano looked at Titus and said, Titus, you know how I feel about that, right? Titus looked up and asked, Huh? Oh yeah, sorry. It's just, well, I always had sort of practice with. And I think that Walker and Rika used to train together. And even though Kyra doesn't really fight with us, she's always hanging out with Selphie discussing subjects. And I bet one of them is how to make yourself better. That's why I think she's able to use her jump rope the way she can. Because Kyrie taught her how to. Takano smiled and said, Yeah, Kyrie is like that. She's like the little sister to all of us. And sometimes she acts like our mother, being overprotective and scolding us when she feels like she needs to. Titus nodded, then said, That's true and all, but you seem to be the protective older brother to Kyrie, you know? Takano crossed his arms and then asks, What do you mean by that, Titus? Titus smiles and says, We all know that Sora's a crush on Kyrie, and I bet that Kyrie's a crush on Sora as well. Riku's like their father at times, and he acts like their brother at other times. But you, Takano, act like an overprotective brother to Kyrie only, and act like a scolding father to Sora and a worthy rival to Riku. But only to Kyrie are overprotective. In fact, you almost look alike. If she had red eyes just like you, then we could say that you were siblings. Takano laughed and said, Yeah, sure. If that were true, then you and Sora would have to admit that you guys are related. You look just like him, so much so that you either have to be brothers or one of you is a clone. Takano and Titus started laughing. Then Takano said, Alright then, later, Titus. I better get the rest of the supplies or else Kyrie's gonna be mad. Takano then left the higher area of the treehouse and went to the location that he called his room. It was filled with different drones. Some of them were of Sora and the other islanders. Some of them were of the island itself, and the rest were of his friends, family, and adventures he's had, both the good and the bad. He even has a drawing of Megidramon fighting Beelzemon on the wall to remember the day he saw evil. Ricardo shook his head, getting the memory out of his head. He gripped his necklace. his hazardous necklace. The last thing that Rika Nanaka gave him before he ended up on Destiny Islands. And the last thing in the small room, besides a bed, was his white and gold D-Arc, which remained inactive ever since he woke up on the island. As Takano picked it up, he began to think of the questions he had. Why was the question Takano has asked himself since day one, since that day 1 month ago. Why did I end up here? What happened to my home, my friends? Henry, Rika, Kazu, Kenta, Susie, Jerry, Riel, Terriamon, Renamon, Machinedramon, Marine Angemon, Lotmon, Cybermon, Calamon, and Gilmon. Where are you guys? What happened that I can't remember? And Rika, why did you give me this 1 day before the anniversary of our first date? Did you know something was going to happen to me? Takano shook his head and placed his digivice back on the table it was on. Then he went back outside and toward some of the palm trees that were on the island. Takano put his fingerless gloves back on and proceeded to climb the trees and pick the freshest coconuts. And one good thing of a month on a tropical island teach you, that you can tell when the fruits are ripe and when they're not. Then, after he found 4 of the ripest coconuts, he picked them off and placed them into his backpack. Then he went to the tool shed that was on the beach and went inside. The inside was nothing special. It was usually used by the adults that live on the other islands to help the kids keep their island all nice and well up to date. You see, of all the islanders, Takano's the one who actually lives on this particular island. Everyone else lives on a different part of the islands where their parents work and where their school is. Takano was already done with middle school before he ended up on the islands, and summer vacation only just started, since Takano had no reason to sign up for Destiny High. Not only that, but he was 15 years old. Now, for some, that may be a bit young, but to be living on an island all by yourself. Now, for some, that may be a bit too young to be living on an island by yourself. But when you had to save the world from evil digital monsters, you kind of grow up quick. And besides, Takano was able to handle himself just fine on his own. Sure, he misses his friends and family, but he's not going to wallow in pity because of it. He knows they can handle themselves without their goggle-headed leader. Takano then decided that there was nothing he could use in the tool shed and left. Then he went towards the island that was connected to the area where the tool shed was by a bridge. On the island, he was Riku, who noticed him and asked, "Hey, almost done?" What the heck? What in the world was that? Hey, Takano, almost done with collecting the supplies yet? Takano nodded and said, "Almost. Just need to gather some fruit and I'll be all set." Riku nodded, then smirked and said, "Well, I suppose I could lend you the fruit I collected. If you beat me, that is." Takano looked at him and said, "I've been doing a lot of fighting today." Riku asked, "Let me guess. You have fought Titus, Selphie, and Walker today, haven't you?" Takano nodded and said, "Sure did. Selphie really almost had me with her jump rope. I'm telling you, she's almost scary with that thing." Riku nodded and said, "I think it's because of you, Takano, that she's changed a bit." Takano asked, "What did I do?" The silver-haired boy smiled and answered, "The way you talked about Rika. I think you made Selphie realize that she could be more than she is, and she just pushes herself more. You see, she used to just use her jump rope as defense and hope to wear you out. But after hearing the stories you told us about your friends, I think she wants to become stronger than she is." Takano then asks, "Why would she want to do that?" Riku answers, "Because, Takano, she may not want to leave the island with us, but she wants to be able to keep up with us. so she's pushing herself to be stronger. And if you ask me, I think that everyone has changed a bit since you've arrived here, Takato. You've changed us all for the better, Takato. Takato looked at him questionably and asked, I couldn't have changed everyone that much, could I? Riku looked at him and said, Takato, before you arrived here, me and Sora always competed with each other, and Kara used to watch us compete, then proceed to scold us when we took things too far. Titus, Waka, and Selphie used to help me and Sora out in our training, and even Kara used to chat with Selphie for days on end about school and even battle strategies on rare occasions. Then you show up, and everyone else seems to have become more serious. When you first fought Sora and lost, we just thought you had experiences in fighting, and that you were just making an excuse when you said that you had more experience using a real sword. Then, when you found those gloves in your back pocket, you showed us just how strong you really were, and showed us that you actually had some real experience when it came to fighting. So we all decided to test your strength, and you managed to beat us all. And when we asked what your world was like, and you explained it to us, we realized why you were stronger than us. So we decided to step up our training regime, and soon enough, we were able to keep up with you. And soon enough, we were able to beat you at times. Not always, but sometimes. That is what I mean, Takato. Takato was shocked at what his silver-haired friend had just told him. He asked, So, do you want to have another go at me, Riku? Riku shook his head and then said, Not really. I would never admit it in front of Sora, but you are the strongest one of us on the island. No matter how hard we train, you have something that we don't. Takato then asked, And what may that be? Rika smiled lightly and said, You have experience, Takato. Takato thought about it, then said, I guess that's true. I guess seeing death, destruction, and being in the middle of a war between a digital counterpart of your world give you a lot of experience after all. Riku nodded, then said, It's true, and you are also a lot more mature than the rest of us. Takato nodded and said, Well, what can I say? I had to grow up quick when Digimon started to invade my home. When it all began, I was carefree and happy that I had. When it all began, I was carefree and happy that I had my own Digimon. But then I started to realize just what being entertainment was all about. Having to protect not only my world, but the Digi world as well. So yeah, I guess that I'm more mature than others my age. But so what? Sure, I guess that I did ask to be a tamer, but I only thought it was just a kids' show. I had no idea that they really existed. Riku nodded, then said, You know, Takato looked up as Riku spoke. Ever since you got here, I started to wonder. Riku shook his head and then said, Never mind. Just doubting my wish at the moment. Takato saw that Riku wanted to say something, but he knew that Riku had a reason to be doubtful at the moment. Then he said, I know what you mean. Riku looked at him skeptically and asked, Oh, really? Takato nodded and said, You have good reasons to be doubtful, Riku. I'm just a bit worried. I'm just a bit worried is all. You're doubtful because we could just end up sailing to a different part of Destiny Islands and not go anywhere. Riku nodded and said, You're right, that is why I'm doubtful, but why are you worried, Takato? The tamer replied with, Because I fear that something could go wrong, and the raft could end up falling apart while we're sailing. And you could end up separating and washed ashore somewhere, or possibly worse. Riku looked at Takato and said, I think that you're worrying too much, Takato, don't you think? Takato shook his head, then said, Possibly. I don't know why, but for some reason, I just have a bad feeling, is all. Riku nodded and said, Yeah, after a year living the way you did, I would feel a bit worried as well. But I know one thing's for sure. Takato looked up at him and asked, Oh, and what's that? Riku smirked and threw Takato some fruit and said, Carrie's gonna be upset if we make her wait any longer. Takara asks, wait, wasn't I gonna have to fight you to get this? Riku smirked and said, you could fight me tomorrow, but today we should just head on over to Kairi. I just hope that Sora isn't done before us. Takaro then asked, weren't you supposed to help Kairi tie up some more logs to the raft, Riku? The silver-haired boy smiled and said, I did that while you and Sora were out searching for the items on your list. Takaro smirked at him, then said, I see. Well then, in that case, thanks, Riku. Takaro then dashes away from Riku, who smirks and runs after him. Riku then says, not bad, Takaro, not bad. Two of them laughed all the way back to their meeting place, where they saw Kairi, and surprisingly, Sora was there as well. Kairi had her hands on her hips and a frown on her face, then asked, what took you two so long? Takaro said, sorry, Kairi. I ended up having to fight Waka, Selphie, and Titus while I was collecting the supplies. But don't worry, I got everything. Takaro put down his backpack and took out 4 filled canteens, 4 fresh coconuts, and a basket of sorted tropical fruits. Sora then asked, whoa! How did you collect these? I mean, these coconuts are really fresh. To get these, you need to be able to climb all the way to the top of the trees to reach them. I mean, I usually hit the trees with my sword to knock down the coconuts, but these? How? Takaro smirked and said, you know how I am when it comes to climbing, Sora. Besides, I want to know something important. Sora frowned and asked, what's that? Takaro smirked and pointed to Sora and asked, how did you get here before us? Did you suddenly gain the ability to fly or something? Everyone but Sora started laughing, and Sora asked, what's that supposed to mean? Riku then said, I think that he's just being a bit surprised he managed to beat us here, Sora. Kairi then said, alright everyone, we've been working a lot today, so it's time to retire for the evening. Tomorrow we will gather up the rest of the supplies, and then the day after that, we will set sail. Takaro then asked, shall we head out to our usual spot before we head home? Everyone nodded and headed to the small island with the 3 palm trees, with one of them growing sideways. Then everyone took a seat and watched the sunset. Sora then said, so, Kairi's home is out there somewhere, right? Riku said, could be. We'll never know by staying here. Takaro nodded, then he asked, but just how far will the raft take us? Little side note, as I said, I wrote this in 2017, and this is like a 20-something thousand word chapter, so technically this line I just read said, Riku nodded, then Takaro asked, but just how far would the raft take us? So you can see why I kind of changed it, or whatever. Riku shrugged his shoulders and said, who knows? If we have to, we'll think of something else. Kairi then said, so, suppose you get to another world. What would you do there? Riku hummed and said, well, I haven't really thought about it. It's just, I've always wondered why we're here on this island. If there are other worlds, if there are other worlds out there, why did we end up on this one? And suppose there are other worlds, then ours is just a little piece of something much greater. So we could have just as easily ended up somewhere else, right? Sora shrugged and said, I don't know. Takaro said, it could have been by chance or luck that we ended up here. Or as some might say, destiny. Sorry. Cinema Syndrome Rape kicks up. Riku said, exactly. That's why we need to go out there and find out. Just sitting here won't change a thing. It's the same old stuff, so let's go. Kairi said, you've been thinking a lot lately, haven't you? Riku nodded and said, we'll have you and Takaro to thank for that. If you two hadn't come here, I would never have thought about any of this. So Takato, Kairi, thanks. Kairi said, You're welcome. Takato said, Sure, don't mention it. But if the interworldly police force found out about our stupid words, don't tell them that I told you. Everyone started laughing at this. Then Takato asked, How many words do you think there are out there? Sora shrugged his shoulders and said, I don't know, but if we do get off this island, I want to see them all. Sora asked Takato, Hey, Takato, what was your world like? Takato smiled at Sora and saw that everyone was looking at him. Well, as I told you guys before, it was huge. A giant city called Japan. A giant city in Japan called Shinjuku. It is populated and very noisy compared to this place. And growing up was very boring. Well, at first. But then about a year ago, after playing a card game with my friends Kazu and Kenta, I found a strange blue card in my collection. And me, wanting to know what it was, swiped it through my card reader. But when I did, it caused it to spark with electricity, and I thought I had busted it. But then it changed into a red and white digivice, a red and white device. And I knew I had some kind of digivice of my very own. But I didn't have a partner at the time. But before I could really think about it, I had to dash off towards my school. And my teacher made me wait out in the hallway, which allowed me to do some drawing. And that was when I created Gilmon. It was only a drawing at the time, but I made him. Anyways, I'll skip my explanation of my day at school and get to when I was at home investigating my digivice. It was weird, and after examining, I noticed that I had a slot to swipe a card through, and I had this crazy idea to swipe my drawing of Guillemot through it. At first, it got stuck, and I thought I'd broke it. But then after I placed it down on my desk and went to leave to go eat, the digivice started to scan each piece of note that I had for Guillemot. And when it was done, I noticed that I had an egg inside the device. I was so excited. I actually had my own Digimon. It was like a dream come true. But that was until I had to find him. You see, the next day I woke up to find that the egg hatched, and I missed it. I was sad that I couldn't see him, but I just didn't have time to investigate it. So I just grabbed my D-Arc and placed it in my pocket and headed for school. After I was done with school, I decided to take another look at my D-Arc. And then a three-dimensional arrow appeared, and it started to make me go through all of Shinjuku. And in the end, it led me to an abandoned sewer system, and then I saw it. The area was lit up by a bright light, and then he showed up. Ugh. As Takata was telling his tale, his friends watched and listened with great interest. When he first came through, he blasted a mouse for no reason, and that scared me. Then he looked at me, almost like he was curious about me. Then he started talking to me in a childish voice. After I introduced myself, he started calling me Takato Man. I guess that was when I guess that when I was writing the information about him, I forgot to add what to make his personality like. I found him funny, but I ran into a problem. Like, how was I going to hide him? Anyway, fast forward to the next day, I found a hiding place. A terrible one, but it was a hiding place nonetheless. I gave him some day old bread from my parents' bakery and told him to stay hidden until I got back. He was like a little kid. You tell him to stay hidden. What does he do? He puts a cardboard box over himself and followed me to school. I tell ya, the look on the principal's face would have been priceless. I wasn't so worried about Guillemon. Anyways, while I was looking for Guillemon, I ran into another tamer named Henry and his partner, a weird dog rabbit mix known as Terriermon. Terriermon was, and still is, really rude and highly annoying. And it wasn't helping me with my situation. Then I ended up finding Guillemon on top of the school roof. Then I decided I was going to find a new hiding place for Guillemon. And that was what I did. Well, what I was doing. I brought him to the park where I would find him in good hiding place until I met another tamer, Rika Nanaka, who was, at the time, the notorious Digimon Ice Queen. She was vicious and had a heart so cold when she walked into a room the temperature would suddenly drop. Anyways, she, along with her partner, a tall kung fu fox named Renamon, attacked us. And when I asked why, she said that was just what Digimon were meant to do. Let's just say that me and her had a disagreement. And when Henry, who was at the time a pacifist, added his 2 cents, she just stormed off. But over time, she ended up seeing that Digimon were just as real as we were. And soon we ended up being a team. Then over the months, our little club of tamers began to grow. Of course, we had our own fair share of people who disagreed with us, like Yamaki, and our little troublemaker Itmon. We always had people who didn't like us. But over the months, we made some very big changes in people. Of course, as much as I would like to say that Rika's change of personality was because of me and Henry, I believe it was actually Calamon who changed Rika. I tell you, that little guy's cheerfulness is contagious. He can be down in the dumps and so depressed that you literally make the room change. And Calamon could just show up and in a few seconds. Everyone would be so cheerful you would think that you just found gold at the end of the rainbow. But anyway, months have passed and our group of tamers has grown exponentially. We also found out that Yumaki, who is head of a company called Hypnos, was trying to find a way to destroy all Digimon. And because he thought that they were all dangerous, boy was he wrong. After his company was shut down after a failed use of his Project Juggernaut, which would send all Digimon back to the digital world and seal all of the possible portals that connect our world, he saw just how efficient the tamers were. And when we had to head into the digital world to save Calamon, it was Yamaki who sent us a comlink to help us out when we needed it. Anyways, while we were there, we got separated, and we each had our own crazy adventure. And soon we reunited with each other, but had to fight Beelzemon, who was the lone wolf Itmon, who was given power if he promised to destroy his tamers. We tried to defeat him, but he was in a whole other league than us. In the end, it was Leomon, Jerry's partner, who tried to make Beelzemon understand that he was on the wrong side. But he ended up being deleted. This caused a lot of reactions from all of us. Jerry became depressed, the others became scared, but me and Wargramon, we became angry. And all we ended up seeing was red. We got extremely angry. And I forced Guilmon to Dark Digivolve and turned Guilmon into a vicious monster called Megidramon. And with his birth, made my original Digivice shatter. He almost deleted Beelzemon, but I was snapped out of my rage by Rika. Beelzemon defeated Megidramon, but he wasn't deleted. He ended up turning back into Guilmon. Then I asked, no, more like begged to have another shot at being a tamer. And that is what I got. Both me and Guilmon's hearts started to sync with each other, started to call out to each other. Then we combined together to create Gallantmon. Together we were able to beat Beelzemon. But before we were able to avenge Leomon's death, Jerry stopped us, saying that deleting him wouldn't bring Leomon back. So we spared him. Only because Jerry asked us to. Then shortly afterwards, we found out that the reason why Calamon was brought to the digital world was because he was the light of Digivolution, the catalyst, and that the guardian sovereign of the South, Sequilamon, believed that they should use his power to be able to give other Digimon the ability to Digivolve to beat an even bigger threat, the D Reaper. Give me a minute. Oh God, how long have I been talking? I don't even know. What that was part of the original program to create. Was the original. What that was part of the original program created when the monster makers made the digital world. It was designed to prevent the program from evolving past its original design, but it became corrupted and started deleting everything in the digital world. Then the Sovereigns gave us a mission: help stop the D Reaper, who is believed to be preparing to invade the human world because it thought that humans have evolved past their original program. And so, with us tamers and Itmon, who had gone through a little soul searching, we headed home with a new tamer, Ryo Akiyama. And once we got back home, we returned to a relatively normal lifestyle. Then it happened. The D Reaper began to appear in our world, and me, Henry, and Rika appeared on the scene, ready to biomerge with our partners. Excuse me, sorry. I know I'm a mess. Ready to biomerge with our partners. But we soon realized that we were only able to biomerge when we were in the digital world. It was because our DNA was turned into data. And because we were back on Earth, we were once again flesh and blood. But the Sovereign saw this as a potential problem and sent us help. Alice McCoy and her friend Doberman, whose sacrifice allowed us to merge with our partners and fight against the D Reaper. Afterwards, we found out that Jerry was trapped in the core of the D Reaper called the Colonel. And while she was in there, her depression was used to power the D Reaper, feeding on her negative emotions. And soon, with the help of the newly reborn Beelzemon, we were able to get inside the Colonel and free Jerry. And then we were able to send the D Reaper back to the digital world and use the Juggernaut that was uploaded to Terriamon and finally defeated our true enemy. But our victory didn't come without a price. For you see, the price we had to pay for the victory was to say goodbye to our partners for a while. But I found a portal underneath the shed we used to hide Gilmon in, and I was able to bring our partners back. And soon life became normal. Well, normal as normal can get when we have digital monsters running through the streets of Japan, that is. And shortly after the return of our partners, me and Rika started to date. And, well, it was definitely a change, that's for sure. And that was how life was for about a year, till I woke up here 1 month ago, with no memory of how I got here. But I'll tell you, it has been nice to hang out with you guys. At least act like a normal kid again. It was fun, but now we have a new journey. Now we will start a new journey. My mistake. Oh, God. Sora, Riku, and Kairi nodded at that statement as Sora said, "You betcha! And don't worry, Takato. We'll find your world one day. That's a promise." Riku and Kairi nodded, and Riku said, "Yeah, that's for sure." Everyone nodded at that, and Takato yawned and said, "Well then, good night, everyone. See you tomorrow." As everyone was headed back, Riku called for Sora. "Sora!" Ricardo and Sora turned around just in time to see Riku toss Sora a star-shaped fruit. Riku then asked, "You wanted one, didn't you?" Sora asked, "A Paopu fruit?" Riku then said as he walked by, "If two people share one, their destinies become intertwined. They'll remain a part of each other's lives, no matter what. Come on, I know you want to try it." Sora then asked, "What are you talking?" Riku didn't answer, but instead just laughed. Takato chuckled at the misery of his friend. Then Takato chuckled at the misery of his friend, then chased after Riku and Sora. Kairi then said, "Hey, you guys coming or what?" Takato, "Tomorrow you better be on time, or if you ever find her, I'm going to tell Rika." Takato shuddered at that and said, "Don't worry, I won't. And don't you even joke about that. She was scary enough before I started dating her. Now she's a whole new kind of scary now that I am dating her." Everyone laughed at that. Then Takato went up to his little room on the island and got ready to sleep. Sora, Riku, and Kairi got in their small boats and headed back to the mainland. Then Sora asked, "Remind me again, why are we building the raft when we have 3 working boats that we can use to head to our new world?" Riku sighed, said, "For one, these things won't handle the rough waters of the ocean waves." Kairi then said, "For two, Takato doesn't have one, and it wouldn't be fair if we were to leave him all alone on the island." Riku then said, "For three, we could end up getting separated and end up losing each other during our travels." Then both Riku and Kairi said, as if they had recited this a million times, "And finally, it took us almost 2 months to build that raft. There's no way that we are going to use our boats after we had spent months to build that thing." Sora then said, all right already. I get it. Yeesh." And so the trio headed back to their homes. Takato was already asleep, and soon the quartet were all in their beds, sleeping off the day's exhaustion to be able to finish the raft the next day. And that's going to be where I stop for today. Well, what do you guys think? Pretty interesting, huh? And as you can see, a lot happens in this story. Uh, this is definitely one of the longest chapters I've ever written. Coming around close to. Hold on, let me check real quick. I got a notepad thing that will tell me exactly how long this chapter was. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and share the story with others. But the full amount of words on this story is a whopping 15,348. Nowadays, now to me, that was like a lot back in the days, but nowadays, that's just average writing for me. Nowadays, I can write anywhere between 15,000 to 20,000 words. Heck, one of the longest chapters I've ever written was for my Undertale fan fiction, which had like 40,000 words for a single chapter. But anyway, it's getting late. I should sign off here. And I've already did the like, comment, subscribe thing, and there it is again. But if you guys have any suggestions for stories you want me to read eventually, put them in the comment section. I'll give you a like and whatnot. And the comment that has the most likes by the end of, if it's a story that I haven't read before, or if it's a story I have read and enjoyed, I might read it eventually. Oh, question. Do you guys want me to continue reading this story, or do you want me to go back and forth between reading this story and The Rise of Team Outcast? Your choice. Well, I talked my head off enough. This is the Chaos Master signing off, and I'll see you all in the next story. Chaos Control!